Welcome to my Accent is No Accident podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Perez, and we're here today with Vicki Dello Joio, who supports women leaders called to be the change to step into the spotlight, speak out, and raise the energy to the people they serve. Vicki is a transformational speaker, Qigong master teacher, and life-changing workshop leader. Since 1975, her brand of brilliance has empowered wellness-motivated, spiritually inclined seekers to infuse body, mind, spirit practices into their very selves so they can tap into the brightness of joy. Use it as a fuel, not a goal, for a life. Popular host of monthly program Key Talks or Qui Talks.
Chi
Talks, and a Hall of Fame reorganizer, teacher of the Chinese Art of Qigong by the Association of Women Martial Arts Instructors. Vicki's spiritual fitness program and book, The Way of Joy, has transformed the lives of thousands of participants. Vicki, it is a joy and honor to have you here with us today.
Oh, Maritza, it's truly my pleasure. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for the invite.
No, thank you very much. And I did purposely also ask you how to say those things because I was like, I have to be okay with not saying things right.
Yeah, well, and the word is actually coming from China, from different languages in China. So there's all kinds of ways to pronounce these things. And qi is what it is often called in Japanese, qi in Chinese, but there's many pronunciations, like there's many accents.
Yes, Qigong. And
Yeah.
okay, got you. So let's start with our theme question. Vicki, what is your accent and why is that an accident?
East Coast United States, I think. It's a slight tinge of New York, which is where I grew up. I moved to California back in the 70s, so I've been here a lot longer. And I think the New York part has kind of softened a little bit. So I'm not speaking the same accent that I think I grew up with. And it's been interesting that it's so fluid. It changes. It changes over time.
Yes, we transform, right? We transform depending on when we move.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and when I was in New York, I was really kind of very shy. I grew up in a family that was artists and people, and my father was a fairly well-known composer at the time, and so there were a lot of like high-level artists around. And so my accent was nothing because I hardly spoke. I was actually scared to speak, and it really took um, making a big shift, part of which was the move. But I mean, I've lived in many different places, and part of it was just a decision to find my voice. So yeah.
And then now, and this is beautiful because now that's what you do for others, helping them find their voice.
Yes. Find their voice and find their story, because I find so many people that I get to work with are really visionary leaders. It's like you said in the introduction, they're really wanting to be the change that they want to see in the world. They want to bring in more equity, more sense of and people having the right to show up in their full power with a sense of respect and reciprocity. These are the people that I love working with, and a lot of times there's a lot of adversity that they've gone through to get to where they are, and so I really help them in terms of telling their story and how to really deliver their message from a stage.
Which is beautiful. And I have had the opportunity to have two of them in the podcast, and I actually loved the presentations. And I saw the before and after, the transformation that you made on them, and the way they told the stories,
Mm.
and the way how they bring joy and tears as they tell the stories. It's beautiful.
Oh,
So what drove you to not only your personal story, but how did this come alive for you?
The work that I do, how did that come alive?
Yeah.
I think that the way I would say that it came alive was that I I want to see a world shift, right? I want to see a paradigm shift in my lifetime, and so I'm very motivated. And I found that particularly women leaders and often women of color leaders, that their stories are the ones that they understand because they understand what it's like to be lower down on the hierarchy so that that gives them more wisdom, right? I think when people are on the bottom, they see a lot more up on the top than people on the top can see anything below them, right? So there's a way in which I feel like these are the leaders of the future. These are the ones that are going to help shift things. So that's a kind of a sort of grandiose philosophical thing. For me personally, because I'm coming from a place where I was so shy as a kid, and I really wanted to bust through a bunch of obstacles. I really, I come from New York is a very nitty gritty place, right? Where it's sort of what you see is what you get. It's very practical, tactical. There's not a lot of woo there. And I actually became my own worst fear because when I moved to California, I was really afraid I'd become one of these woo people who believed in energy and things that you can't touch or feel. And that's actually how I've been making my living for about 50 years, working with particularly Qigong, the Chinese martial arts and energy arts, as well as with theater directing and stuff like that. So I feel like really wanting to take these skills and pass them forward to the leaders that I want to support. That's what gets me up in the morning. I'm not no spring chicken. I've been doing this for a long time, and so this is a period of time for me, Maritza, where I feel like it's legacy. What do I want to pass forward? Who do I want to, give whatever I can to support to get their voices out there as soon as possible? Because I think, a lot of people have been saying to me, the world's on fire. And so I'm really looking at that, like there's so much that feels at risk right now for so many people. So we really need new leadership to come out. We need new paradigms of how to treat one another, how to listen to one another, and how to really live in a world that is truly reciprocal.
Yeah, and I love that purpose. I love that what you're saying, and especially because when you're saying people that were lower in the hierarchy and that were able to see up, I can see how women have always been the supporting role behind the blank, right? Whether it's a
Mm-hmm.
husband, another leader, executives, anything.
Mm-hmm.
They have, or we have, a different perspective of those things that they don't see because women that were behind the scenes are the ones helping
They see
resolve
what's
those.
going on, right? Or, I mean, I think about people I know who've done domestic work, and so they know the dynamics of a family that they're working with in a way the family can't even see, and may not even see that person as a whole person because they're an employee or they're, so there's a way in which I think that when you're on that level, there's a wisdom that can be cultivated that is truly able to see what's wrong with this picture and what could make it right in a way that people who are in the middle of it, you can't see the picture when you're inside the frame. So I do believe that there's something in here about leadership coming from how do we bring it from below as opposed to the top down, trickle
Yeah.
down concept. Yeah.
And that amazes me because um, not many people see it that way. But the truth is the people that are needed right now are those that are capable to understand everything and everyone with empathy
Yes.
and bring love to the equation.
Yes. It's so beautifully put. Yes. Yeah.
So right now we are in a situation like you were saying, in a situation where people say the world is on fire, but we're really in a situation where everywhere around the world we're looking for the leader,
Hmm.
and the leader might not be up there, might just be among us and might
Yes.
be just all of us getting
Yes.
getting together and telling stories to to each other.
Yeah, I love that because you're talking at that point about collective, right? The collective culture, the collective consciousness, and the ways in which we all can become leaders, and we all leaders within the context of what it's a redefinition of leadership, right? As opposed to the the man on the horse, at least here in this country, this image of this, the Lone Ranger savior, white savior, all of that. That can just put aside because what you were just saying really makes me think about how we really need one another, and that those collaborations are really what create that new model and that new paradigm.
Yes, and we are able to have a more balanced world
Mm, mm,
where we all hold the baton or
mm,
pass it along
mhm,
at the right time without having to have the war, without having to have this terribly bad competition among each other, but
mm.
knowingly that, okay, I finished my turn, it's your turn now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And it not only does that, it also prevents burnout, right, for the person who has been holding responsibility.
Yes. And
Yeah.
then, and you're helping women,
Hmm.
which I love, not only because I'm a woman, so I might be biased about it, and but because what I see in the world is that we have been put aside, and the stories that I have heard from every woman that have come through the podcast, and I have learned so many things, are very, very powerful. The
Hmm.
stories of the men are very powerful too.
Hmm.
But what amazes me is the capability that we have coming from women
Hmm.
and
I
the
so agree.
strength.
Yeah, yeah, it's and it, I mean, I know in terms of Chinese astrology and various things that I follow, this is the time for this energy to start to come forward. People call it feminine energy. I don't really think of it as feminine or masculine, but I think of, a different sensibility, right? A different sensibility coming forward. Which is, this is an energetic. And because I've been so steeped in Qigong, which is a Chinese martial art for healing and working with, how do we raise the energy, and how do we project it? What does that look like? That starting to look at how do we even do that? How do we stand in our power, take up space, speak use our voice, speak our truth from a place of power that's really coming from that power within, as opposed to the power over, which is what I love about Qigong, because it's really about that internal, building those internal resources so that you can really stand in that confidence.
And that's beautiful. We
Mm.
met at a retreat not too long ago, and I missed the qigong therapies you were doing in the morning.
Yeah.
Um, it was, and I am going to confess, it was because we were having pajama parties and staying out very night, very late at night. So the next day it was rush to get ready and to the next conference, right?
Yeah.
But I loved how everybody was praising and feeling different, and the energy was raised beautifully.
Mm. Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yes. So, what is Qigong?
Qigong is a phrase or a name that's like word dance. So if you said, well, I teach dance, well, fine. Is it tap dance? Is it salsa? Is it ballroom? Is it alvanelli? Is it ballet? What kind of dance? So Qigong is like that. It's a broad word that covers over 6,000 exercises. So somebody could study Qigong with me and then go to another teacher, and there would be very little that would be necessarily the same in terms of the actual movements that you do. And Qigong works basically with movement, with breath, and with intention. So it's a way to embody your intention. So if you say, for example, if you say, like I saw, I want to write a book, And so I have that in my mind. I'm going to write a book, and that's coming from my inspiration, which in Qigong we would call this from the heaven realm, from the sort of the place where we're connected to the divine inspiration. And then the next step is, okay, I need to figure out how to do that. I need to, in my case, when I wrote my book, I had to take a break from teaching and go on sabbatical and just spend time specifically writing and dealing with the strengths and limitations of that. How was I going to do it? How was I going to support myself? How was I going to channel this information? All this stuff. So the detail work is the human realm, right? And that's where we're talking from our heart, where we're speaking and connecting with one another. And then the final is, I have the book in my hand, and that's the earth realm. So, and that has to do with manifestation and how you walk your talk. So Qigong, the thing that seems to carry through all of the different systems that I've studied, because I've been in this for a long time, so I've studied with a lot of different people, is that it's all working with intention, with breath, and with movement. And sometimes that's actually external movement that you're doing, or sometimes it's internal movement that you're using meditation to move energy in the meridians and things like that, it's based in Chinese medicine, both classical and traditional Chinese medicine. And so you're working with the healing energies, which is what a lot of folks in the United States who are familiar with Qigong are really know a lot more about the medical Qigong. But there's spiritual Qigong, there's martial arts Qigong. There's all kinds of different types of Qigong that people do for different reasons. So that's a very sort of scattered answer to your question.
No, but that is beautiful, because I thought it was only martial arts. But look, now with your answer, there are different kinds of Qigong, and then people will do as they need, whether it's through martial arts or spiritually.
Exactly. Or medical, right? Where they're really feeling like, oh, I just had a client who called me who had come to start working with me about 6 months ago, and after 6 months, she had some severe liver issues. Now, I'm not a medical practitioner, and I'm not suggesting people do this instead of seeing their doctor or anything like that. But she did say that I gave her some liver medical qigong, and in 6 months her liver's completely clear. She's gone off the medications she had to take, everything. Her doctor's like, what's going on? She's so much better. That doesn't happen for everybody, but it can. I mean, it's definitely a possibility, because you're working with how the energy that the molecules, the atomic structures of these different organ systems, which there's a lot to say about that in the Qigong world, and I won't get into it, but it's a way to heal. And I've also found, for me personally, it's been a very powerful way to heal emotionally, as well as physically.
Okay. So, and that is a key, because you use this as a method to help people tell their story, become
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah, so the Qigong is sort of that creating that internal world where you can really feel grounded and centered, aligned with your vision, with your expression, and with your power, those three realms. So to have that all intact, and then from there to learn how to deliver. So what is the story? How do you craft the story? What's important? What's not important? And that's coming more from my theater background, because I've been a director and a performer for over 50 years. So I've directed hundreds and hundreds of solo shows and of speakers telling their story. And so, how do we draw the story out so that it actually means something? Like, a lot of people come to me and they think I don't really have a story. And the more we talk, the more I ask questions, the more I bring it out. All of a sudden, there's this beautiful journey that only they can tell, because only they have experienced it. And that's what I love to do. I love to help people find that. I had one client who said to me, I used to hate to tell my story every time I spoke on stage. It was so boring. And now I can't wait, because it's different every time. Because I teach people how to be spontaneous with it too.
And
So,
that's beautiful. I love that. I'm booking a session with you. It is wonderful, because sometimes, like, especially, let's talk about how you do how diverse your work is, because you work with women from all walks of life and
mhm,
in many cultures.
mhm,
So, for instance, people like me, that I'm from Latin America, I'm from South America. I'm not
mhm,
as shy as someone from Mexico or Central America, but we are still very shy, especially to talk about ourselves.
Yes.
I'm not Caribbean, so I'm not like, so
Yeah, you're not Cuban. Yeah.
so we're not, we're like happy, and sad is blah, but when it comes to talk about us, we immediately lower our voice. We get to a point where humble is like, what? What are you saying? Humble is like, I don't want to be heard.
Hi, I'm very happy to know you are here watching our podcast today. It is an honor to be featuring so many entrepreneurs on the journeys of their inside voice, their accent that is not an accident. And we want to reach out more people like you who are creating a better world of diversity, inclusiveness, equity, and belonging. So please take a moment to hit the subscribe button below, like, and share to others. And even if you want to leave a comment, that'll be nice. Thank you for your support. And now back to the episode.
Really interesting. It's been an issue for me too. I mean, I remember when I went to see my dad one time, and I have a long history with him. He had disowned me, and then when we reconnected again. But his wife was asking me about some of the work I did, and as I was telling her, she said, "This is great stuff. You should talk about this more often." And my father turned to her. He said, "No, no. You know what I love about her is that she never talks about herself." And I thought to myself at that moment, "Thank you." It was like, thank you for saying that, because now I know where this is grounded. Now, I'm not saying that's the same as do you grow up in Colombia? Is
In
that right?
Colombia, in
Yeah,
Colombia.
I'm not saying it's the same for a woman from Colombia or anything like that, but there's something about that where I started to realize that my sense of humility and feeling humble, which is a value that I actually really treasure, was
Yeah.
getting tangled up with my low self-esteem. Like, who would want to hear me? I don't have anything to say, all that kind of stuff. And so the humility and the low self-esteem became wedded. And so it took a while to disentangle that so that I can still feel humble. And I do feel humble. I feel very humble by the people that I get to work with. I mean, I work with brilliant people, so it's very humbling, but I don't feel like, oh, I don't have anything to offer. That's not where I am anymore. So,
Okay. And you help women do that too.
yes,
Just
yes,
come out of that
yes,
stuff. Your story matters,
your story matters.
and your story is going to change somebody's life.
Yes, exactly. You got it, Maritza. Thank you. I couldn't have said it better.
Yes, so I love it because I had the people already talk that will talk in the podcast. Um and the stories are magnificent. But what is magnificent is that resiliency created throughout the story and the way they tell it. And
Hmm.
and now the majority of the people that go through tough upbringings or go through tough times is that they are all now helping others get through those things or something that is not the same but similar.
Hmm.
So I don't want to name anybody, but like there are different stories that we have. I don't want to have spoilers. There are stories that help others go, well, if she could do this, if she can, so I can.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And that's what's needed, because we need to be able to offer hope and a helping hand wherever we can. I mean, I feel like that's what humanity really is. And when we're not in that state, it's because of a kind of an illness, a mental illness that makes us forget that we are here because we are all part of the same collective, you know, life force. We're all made of the same stuff. And and we have our different stories, which is what makes diversity so delicious and genius and multifaceted and, brilliant. But there's also some basic part where we can really know that we are here to help each other. We are here to, we're not supposed to be doing this alone. That's a myth. I think that's based in white supremacy. So I think it's really, what is it that we can do as human beings, recognizing the humanity in one another, even those that we don't agree with or that we feel different, we have a different opinion or different perspective
Yes,
to be able to really look at that.
exactly. And what you're saying also brings me to say something very important, that not only telling your story will bring something to other people, it will also be important. And today I had a meeting with someone that said something very important is also being there for others and listening to their story.
Absolutely. I'm very inspired by the work of Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela in South Africa around their work with reconciliation, and the way in which they access stories to have dialogues that had never been had in that country, and to have some deep listening happen because of it. I'm very inspired by that, and I think you're absolutely right that the deep listening piece is just as important as finding our own voices, finding our own ears, that we start to really hear one another, and particularly to be aware of, how, again, the hierarchy, how systems of oppression work, and to really start to look at those people who have been most privileged are the ones who need to listen the most deeply.
Exactly. And then when you're saying these, it takes one person to make a difference,
Mm-hmm.
but all of us to build it.
Beautiful.
So one person had the idea, but
Mm.
they needed to bring together people
Mm.
to
To make it happen.
make it happen.
Mm. Mm.
And we need one another. And the ultimate, whatever religion, whatever spiritual upbringing you have, or if you don't believe in anything, everyone comes here with one purpose, and it's to love.
Mm. That's so true. So true.
So if we come here to learn how to love one another, and then we transcend and we leave our body and we learn that with one person, we made a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And last week, I don't know why this week, ever since Sunday or Saturday, it has been in my head saying, you really, really have to be the change that you want to see in the world. And those are the words of Gandhi.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So make it happen little by little.
Be the change.
Yes.
Be the change.
Be the change you want to see in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And what other thing I wanted to talk about was when somebody is very shy and they have it, we have the speech ready, but then they go in on a stage and then they get like a
Deer in the headlights.
headlights.
Yeah.
I can do this. It actually happened to me when I was 16, probably.
Mm.
I had written the most beautiful poem, and everybody was like, oh my God, it's going to be beautiful, Maritza. This is beautiful. And I went on the stage and I saw the whole school in front of me, and I couldn't say it. I
Yeah.
ran away and I started crying. And today I'm like, I have no idea why I cried.
Mm.
I ran away. So it's like, I don't know where I was going either.
That sounds traumatic. That sounds like those trauma.
So, and the teacher came behind me and he read the poem in front of everybody because he said it was worth listening to. But that's high school. Now
Right.
in professional life and real life, how do we manage that?
How do we manage stage fright? Is that what the question is?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, I cannot say stage fright. So I kind of like ask a thing without saying it, but it sounds so bad.
You know, I have been in the business for over 50 years and I still get stage fright. I think the trick is, in terms of managing it, is learning how to transform it so that it's not something that freezes us, but that frees us, gives us a freedom. There's certain techniques that I love to use from Qigong that help people get really grounded and aligned. And so that then when they walk on stage, it's an easy flow and they're not intimidated. But I think a lot of what happens, particularly for girls and women, although I think, they say that public speaking is one of the number one fears that people have. And there's a saying that's people say they would rather be giving the eulogy by the side of be in the coffin than giving the eulogy from a stage. But I think that one person once gave me this and I really loved it. She was also a performer. She said, don't focus on what they're thinking of you, because a lot of it is self-consciousness, right? It's like, what is my voice gonna shake? Am I gonna make a mistake? Am I gonna fluff my line? Am I gonna stumble? Are people gonna see how terrible I really am? Whatever it is that goes on in our brain. To focus instead on the love, which is, what you were talking about, is that when you do this, it's an act of service, it's an act of love. So you're focusing on loving them as opposed to, are they going to love me? That's one of my favorite mental things to do when I'm going to go on stage and I feel a little freaked out. And then there's actually qigong exercises that you can do that can help shift us into a place where that confidence holds us up. I actually did a summit the other day and I had half an hour of sleep and I had every technical problem I could imagine. It was a Zoom thing. Every technical thing in the world happened, right? My microphone wasn't working. I couldn't get my camera on. The lights were we had a power outage. I mean, it was just like one thing after another. So by the time I was supposed to be on that stage, I was literally, my whole body was shaking. And I had to really stand with my feet apart to really do some of my practice to be able to deliver. And it reminded me of when I went one time when I went fire walking. Have you ever done a fire walk, Maritza? Do you know what it is?
No.
So what it is they build this big fire, like a big bonfire, and then they wait till it's hot coals. They spread out the hot coals on a pathway and you walk on it barefoot. When I told my mom about that, she was so angry with me. She's like, what? Somebody tells you to jump out of a window? But anyway, I remember that, this was something I'd always thought I want to do. I'd heard of it and I thought I've always wanted to do that. And there were a lot of men that were leading fire walks, but I thought if a woman ever leads it, I want to do it with her. And the next day, this was way back in the 80s, so it was pre-computer. I got a flyer in the mail that said that there was going to be a fire walk the next week being led by this woman from Mexico.
Okay, yes.
And so I was like, oh no, how, and then of course I was terrified. So I went to it. And one of the things that the leader said is sometimes it takes more courage not to walk than to walk. If you really feel like you can't do it, don't do it. Sometimes just not doing everything because everybody else is doing it is the brave thing. So I had permission to not walk. And I remember getting closer and closer because we were in a line and people were one at a time walking. And it was not like just step on, step off. It was like, many steps along this hot coals. And I remember my whole body was shaking, just like shimmer. You know how when you're next to a fire, the air gets like kind of shimmery?
Yes.
My whole body felt like that shimmery. And I thought, well, what if I could just raise my energy to match the heat? Because the heat was rising and the air was shimmering and my body was shaking. I thought, well, what if I just let my body do that and become like this heat that's rising? And I walked and didn't get burned, and it was amazing. It was, I put my focus on what is it that I want to do? Why am I doing this? Where does it want to go? And it was all at that time about applying certain things in my business. And I walked, and it was, it was very liberating because it was a way in which I could be in the face of fear and use it as opposed to be stopped by it.
That is amazing. I've seen the fire walk and I've seen the glass walk as well.
Oh, okay.
But I've never done it.
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
Yeah.
So maybe, but when I was younger, maybe now I will try it.
Mm.
Maybe now I'll try it. Probably when you're younger, you kind of like are not, you're not as sure as, the assurance is not there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great idea. So other than having the speakers, there are other things that you help to people with, like preparing for interviews, preparing for giving a speech for government?
Right. I've worked with people who've done presentations to the Supreme Court, who are going to go do something at the United Nations. So yeah, speakers. So I've done that a lot. But there's also, speaking. There's the one-to-many speaking, right, where you're on a stage or you're on a big platform and you're delivering that way. But then there's also speaking, like it could be in a small community, whether it's a, mosque, church, synagogue, something like this, or speaking even sometimes just one-on-one to a potential client or to a potential referral partner where the stakes are high, right? Where the conversation, you're like, maybe you're having a conversation with with a family member where you see things really differently, and it's really looking at how can we communicate from a place that's grounded, centered, and non-defensive. Because one of the tools that I use is from somebody named Sharon Strand Ellison. It's called Powerful Non-Defensive Communication. So some clients, like one of the people that I worked with, who is a very well-known lawyer, she was having problems speaking with certain members of her family. And so I'm really working on how do we communicate. It's partly what are the words we say and how do we phrase things in a way that will not trigger more defensiveness? How do we dismantle defensiveness? It's also how to how to really stand in, again, it's this power within as opposed to power over, and to be able to stand in those boundaries, what I think of the boundaries, which is the I am, who I am, meeting who you are, and where that meets is where we connect. So I'm bringing up the question of boundaries, and there's a whole theme in the work that I do called Boundaries Dissolve Barriers, about how do we establish boundaries as a form of connection, not as a form of protection. So but that's a whole other topic. So
Yes,
lost in the
and
weeds.
it is so interesting because it tells us that there is a wide range of, and let's put it this way, it's a diverse world where
Mm,
you're going to use this, even if it is talking in front of your family, that like you were saying, whether
mm,
it's talking in front of classmates to give a presentation, uh,
mm,
or in law, they have to give a trial.
yeah,
I forget what is the name of it.
an argument.
Yes,
It's called
yes,
an argument. Yeah.
yes. So it is
Talk about
incredible
setting
when
up adversity right there.
yes. So all these things that you have a wide range of people,
I do. Yeah.
and it's amazing. I love the work you do, and not only with women, but your focus right now is with women, but it's also with a wide range of people
Yeah.
that you help. When we are on a stage and there are possibilities to do Q&A, there are moments that, those moments when the people raise their hands and they ask questions. When you're starting to be a speaker, it is very difficult to come up with answers and improvise.
Mm.
What would you say is the best way to approach questions and give yourself the time to think about how to respond without the audience noticing you are thinking about the answer?
I think I love that question, Maritza. I think that's a brilliant question. One of the things that beginning speakers don't realize is that it's okay to be silent, that you don't have to fill every moment with the sound of your voice. That and so that's the first thing. So taking that moment to stop and think is actually, as long as you're present, as opposed to freezing and just kind of disassociating. But if you're really present and really thinking, people will stay with you. They're very forgiving. They want to hear what's going on internally. The second is to be transparent about that. I've never thought about that question, or I don't know the answer, but I would love to find out and get back to you. There's ways in which you don't, to not feel like you have to know everything, because you don't, to be truthful, to let yourself be exactly as you are. And that's simple, but it's not easy, right? Where you really let yourself be who you are in that moment, not being afraid to stop, listen to what your inner wisdom is saying and saying, I've never thought about it, but this is what's occurring to me now. And I remember when that happened. Your mind will kick in if you give it that moment. And the other thing is to breathe, to really let yourself especially if you start to get scared or feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to say, just take a moment to breathe, to be present, and just wait. Something will come. Something always does.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for these beautiful tips. Thank you for your purpose and for the way that you are helping women and many entrepreneurs and many individuals out there to find their voice and to find joy in what they're doing.
It's an absolute, speaking of joy, an absolute joy to be connected to you, Maritza. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you. Is there anything? Well, first of all, let's tell our audience where they can find you.
My website is my name, vickidellojoio.com. So I don't know if you can see my name on the bottom of the screen, but another way to find me, if you go to yourpowerpresence.com, that particular address will take you to a guide that I wrote that's for speakers, and it gives some specific physical things that you can do before you go on stage or when you're going to be a presenter. So it's really directed towards speakers. But I've had a lot of people who just want to know how to communicate better also be able to use some of these tools that are inside of this ebook. And so it's one of the best ways to get that information. But the other thing that's there is an opportunity to connect with me directly. So if you go to yourpowerpresence.com, whether or not you decide you want to read that guide, you can also schedule a time to connect with me, and I'd be happy, especially if you have a story that you feel like you want to tell, or you feel like you're wanting to, if you feel like you have a solution, a vision, something that will help the world be a better place. I want to help you.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much. Final thought to our audience?
Well, I think it's a continuation of what I just said, Maritza. I think it's really, I believe that we all have a message, we all have a purpose to be here. And it's really important for you to find it. It's really important for you to name it. It's really important for each of us to get up there, have our voice, be able to sit down, listen deeply, and to raise the energy of the people that we're around. And there's very specific ways to do it. So if you have, if that resonates for you, please find whoever it is that would help you do it, because we need you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vicki. I loved our conversation. And to you, our audience, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and leave a comment to share us up. And remember, you came here to love, to be loved, and to love one another. See you next time.
Hi, it's Maritza here. If you like this episode of My Accent is No Accident podcast and would like to listen more like this, subscribe wherever you're listening to it or watching it. Leave us a nice review and share with your friends, family, and network. Thanks for listening.